At 6:12 on a Thursday morning in a quiet neighborhood outside Tallahassee, Florida, Gerald sat at his kitchen counter with the glow of a pendant light casting a warm yellow circle over his hands. His laptop displayed a Social Security benefits estimator, and the number $1,847 per month stared back at him in bold black type. He had turned 62 3 weeks ago, and the question circling his mind for the past year had finally landed with a weight he could feel in his chest. A printed spreadsheet lay beside the computer, covered in pencil marks, showing a total retirement balance of $487,200, split across 3 accounts. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint glow of dawn pressing through the blinds. His index finger hovered over the trackpad without clicking, the way a hand pauses before signing something that cannot be unsigned. He leaned back and exhaled slowly, eyes moving between the monthly benefit at 62 and the higher number projected at 67. The gap between those two numbers felt like a riddle wrapped in a threat, because every financial voice he had ever heard told him to wait. Yet something in the math of his own life kept pulling him toward the earlier date. Gerald is not unusual. The majority of Americans approaching their 60s face this identical fork, and most make the decision based on a single piece of advice they heard years ago without understanding the full picture. There is a name for the analysis that separates a good early claim from a costly one, and almost nobody outside professional planning circles learns how it works. This is where the real conversation begins. Claiming Social Security at 62 is not automatically wrong, and waiting until 67 is not automatically right. What matters is a set of variables most people never examine together, and that is exactly what this video will lay open for you. You'll understand the precise conditions under which filing at 62 becomes the mathematically superior choice. You'll see how your other accounts, your tax brackets, and your health assumptions combine into a single decision framework that changes the answer for every individual. You'll learn how to calculate your personal break-even age so the decision stops feeling like a guess. And you'll walk away with a method to pressure test your own plan before you file a single form. You don't need a finance degree for any of this. You just need 20 minutes and the willingness to look at your own numbers honestly. Retirement is a fundamentally different financial environment than the decades of working life that preceded it. And the rules that served you well while earning a paycheck can quietly turn against you once the paycheck stops. During your working years, money flowed in one direction and taxes were handled before you saw the deposit. In retirement, you become the architect of your own income, choosing which accounts to draw from, in what order, and in what amounts each year. If you've recently retired or you're standing on the edge of it right now, everything here applies directly to your next 12 months of decisions. The 3 main containers most retirees work with are traditional pre-tax accounts, Roth after-tax accounts, and taxable brokerage accounts, each carrying completely different tax consequences when you pull money out. Think of your retirement income plan the way a chef thinks about a recipe. Every ingredient changes the flavor depending on when you add it, how much you use, and what temperature the oven is set to. Your Social Security claiming age is one ingredient. Your traditional IRA withdrawals are another, and the Roth conversions you execute are the seasoning that determines whether the final result is balanced or overwhelmed by a single flavor. This recipe metaphor will stay with us because the secret to a good retirement plan is the same as the secret to a good meal: the right ingredients in the right order at the right temperature. Your traditional 401k and traditional IRA hold money contributed before taxes were taken out, meaning every dollar inside has never been taxed. When you withdraw, the IRS treats each dollar as ordinary income, exactly like a paycheck from a job. If you pull $50,000 from your traditional IRA in a given year, that amount gets stacked on top of every other income source, and you pay federal tax on the total. The size of your traditional balance is not the amount you actually have, because a portion of every dollar belongs to the IRS. The question is only when and at what rate you hand it over. Your Roth IRA and Roth 401k work in the opposite direction, because the money inside was taxed before it went in. Withdrawals from a Roth in retirement are completely tax-free, meaning a $50,000 Roth withdrawal adds zero to your taxable income for the year. This distinction matters enormously when you are trying to control which tax bracket you land in, because Roth dollars give you spending power without triggering tax-related penalties that pile up as income rises. The difference between these two account types is not a footnote in your plan. It is the single most important lever you have. Your taxable brokerage account sits in a third category, where growth is taxed as capital gains rather than ordinary income. Long-term capital gains rates are generally lower, often 15% for most retirees, making this a useful middle layer between your pre-tax and after-tax accounts. If you sell investments held for more than a year, you pay the gains rate on only the profit, not the full amount. Understanding these three containers gives you the foundation for every decision that follows, including the central question of when to claim your Social Security benefit. The most common instinct about Social Security is to delay as long as possible, because the monthly benefit grows roughly 8% per year for every year you wait past 62 up to 70. That sounds like an obvious win. The logic feels clean. Bigger check equals better outcome. Why would anyone take the smaller amount if they could just be patient? Here's the thing. That 8% increase only pays off if you live long enough for the larger checks to overcome the years of checks you gave up. If you claim at 62 and receive $1,847 per month, you collect roughly $132,984 over 6 years before a person who waited until 67 receives their first dollar. The break-even age, when the delayed claimer catches up in total dollars received, typically falls between 77 and 80, depending on the exact benefit amounts. If your health history or family longevity makes reaching that age uncertain, the early claim puts real money in your hands during years you can actually use it, yet most retirees never calculate this crossover point. There is a second layer almost nobody discusses, and it involves Medicare. If you delay Social Security and draw heavily from your traditional IRA to cover your expenses, your taxable income can push you above the IRMAA thresholds that set your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums. For a married couple, crossing above $206,000 in modified adjusted gross income triggers a surcharge, raising your premium to over $400 per month instead of the standard $174.70. That surcharge applies per person, so a couple can face over $5,400 per year in extra Medicare costs alone. This cost is invisible to people who only look at the investment growth of their delayed benefit and never examine the tax side effects. There is a third layer connecting directly to how your Social Security benefit gets taxed once you begin receiving it. If your combined income exceeds $44,000 for a married couple, up to 85% of your Social Security becomes taxable. Run the numbers on your own withdrawals from the past year and ask yourself whether this threshold has already started affecting you, because most retirees cross it without realizing what triggered the change. Large traditional IRA withdrawals raise your combined income, which makes more Social Security taxable, which raises your income further, which can push you into a higher tax bracket and trigger IRMAA simultaneously. The ingredients in your recipe are reacting with each other, and if you don't control the temperature, the whole dish burns. Gerald ran these numbers that Thursday morning and saw exactly this pattern forming in his own projections. If he delayed Social Security and pulled $58,000 per year from his traditional IRA, his combined income would cross every threshold, triggering additional taxes and surcharges. The spreadsheet full of pencil marks was his attempt to find the sequence that kept him below those invisible lines. The dominoes keep falling, and they fall faster than most people expect. The real cost is not in any single year, but in the accumulation across 15 or 20 years of retirement. If you pay an extra $4,800 per year in Medicare surcharges, plus $3,200 in taxes on Social Security benefits that would not have been taxable under a different strategy, the math over 18 years exceeds $144,000 in money that simply did not need to leave your accounts. That is not a rounding error. That is a second home, a decade of travel, or a legacy your family will never receive. There is a window that opens for many retirees between the year they stop working and age 73, when required minimum distributions from traditional accounts begin. During this window, your taxable income often drops dramatically because you no longer have a salary pushing you into higher brackets. The 12% bracket for a married couple covers taxable income up to roughly $94,300. And if your only income is a modest pension or early Social Security, you may have enormous rooms sitting completely empty. The majority of retirees let this golden window pass without using it, either because they don't know it exists or because instinct tells them to leave retirement accounts untouched. That instinct is one of the most expensive mistakes in retirement planning. If you claim Social Security at 62 and your benefit is $1,847 per month, your annual Social Security income is approximately $22,164. For a married couple, that leaves over $72,000 of space in the 12% bracket that can be filled with Roth conversions, moving money from your traditional IRA into a Roth IRA, paying tax now at 12% and never paying tax on that money again. The math here is not abstract, and you can calculate it on the back of an envelope. It is the difference between paying 12 cents on every dollar now or 22 cents later when RMDs force the money out at a time you don't control. Ask yourself which tax bracket you are sitting in right now and whether you have been filling the cheap space or letting it go to waste. Each dollar you convert to a Roth during a low-income year never generates taxable income again, never counts toward your IRMAA calculation, and never makes your Social Security more taxable. Over 10 years of consistent conversions during the golden window, you can move $400,000 or more out of your traditional IRA and into a Roth at the lowest rates you will ever see. The long-term effect is a dramatically smaller RMD at 73, which keeps your future income lower, your Medicare premiums at the base rate, and your Social Security taxation minimized. Each conversion is a permanent reduction in your future tax burden. The counterintuitive truth is this: claiming early and paying a small tax now on strategic Roth conversions can save you far more than waiting for a bigger check that arrives inside a tax environment you cannot control. The early claim is not a concession. It is an ingredient added at the right moment to keep the entire recipe in balance. Timing changes everything. The best move is the one that fits the recipe your life actually requires. Patricia is 62 years old, recently retired from hospital administration outside of Minneapolis. She has $360,000 in a traditional 401k, $47,500 in a Roth IRA, and $62,300 in a taxable brokerage account. Her Social Security benefit at 62 would be $1,940 per month, and her annual living expenses run about $54,000 after her mortgage was paid off. Her monthly expenses break down to roughly $4,500, with the largest portions going to health insurance, property taxes, and groceries. She is in good health but has a family history that makes longevity past 82 uncertain. Patricia decides to wait on Social Security until 67, believing the larger check is always the better choice. To cover her $54,000 in annual expenses, she withdraws entirely from her traditional 401k, generating $54,000 in taxable income that places her well into the 22% bracket as a single filer. Her Medicare premiums stay standard for now, but she uses none of the low bracket space for Roth conversions, and her traditional balance barely shrinks relative to future RMD obligations. Your situation might be closer to Patricia's than you think, and if you've been pulling from your traditional account without calculating what bracket you land in, the same invisible cost is compounding in your plan right now. That is the unoptimized path. Now consider Daniel, also 62, retired from a career in engineering near Raleigh, North Carolina. He has $340,000 in a traditional IRA, $72,000 in a Roth IRA, and $58,400 in a taxable brokerage account. His Social Security benefit at 62 is $1,860 per month, and his annual expenses are $52,000. His health is good, his family history is average, and his planning horizon extends into his early 80s. The comparison between his approach and Patricia's will show you exactly what sequencing can do. Daniel claims Social Security at 62, giving him $22,320 per year that covers the base of his expenses. He fills the remaining $29,680 gap by drawing $14,000 from his taxable brokerage, where capital gains on long-held positions are minimal, and $15,680 from his traditional IRA. His total taxable income for the year stays under $31,840, well within the 12% bracket. With roughly $62,000 of room still available, he converts an additional $55,000 from his traditional IRA into his Roth, paying approximately $6,600 in federal tax. The total tax for the year comes to around $9,100, while Patricia pays over $7,400 and converts nothing, leaving her traditional balance exposed to future rates she cannot predict. You can see how the same ingredients, arranged differently, produce a completely different tax outcome. Daniel repeats this conversion strategy for 8 consecutive years, moving $440,000 out of his traditional IRA and into his Roth before RMDs begin at 73. The math on his future required minimum distributions drops dramatically because the traditional balance has been reduced by nearly half. If your income is unusually low this year because of a job transition or early retirement, this is your window to do exactly what Daniel did, and it won't stay open once RMDs begin. His Medicare premiums remain at base rate every year because his modified adjusted gross income never crosses the IRMAA threshold. Over 18 years, from 62 to 80, the cumulative difference between Patricia's approach and Daniel's exceeds $137,600 in total taxes and Medicare surcharges that you could avoid with the right sequence. That gap is not from earning more or spending less. It is entirely the product of sequencing, the order in which ingredients were added to the recipe, and the temperature at which each one was cooked. The first thing to do is request your personal Social Security statement from the SSA website and compare your estimated benefits at 62, 67, and 70. Write those 3 numbers down along with your current age and any health considerations affecting your planning horizon. Calculate your personal break-even age using a simple spreadsheet or one of the free calculators available from the SSA. This single step replaces the vague feeling of, "I should probably wait," with an actual number you can evaluate. The second step is to map every income source you expect in your first full year of retirement, including Social Security, any pension, part-time work, and dividends from taxable accounts. Add them together and compare to your annual expenses to identify the gap your retirement accounts need to fill. If Social Security at 62 covers 40% of your expenses, you know exactly how many dollars must come from other sources. Knowing the gap lets you choose which account to draw from strategically rather than defaulting to the easiest option. This mapping takes less than an hour and changes the quality of every decision that follows. The third step is to fill that gap using the lowest tax sources first, then calculate how much room remains in your current tax bracket. If you are in the 12% bracket with $40,000 or $60,000 of space before crossing into 22% territory, that space is an opportunity to convert traditional IRA dollars into Roth at a rate you are unlikely to see again. Every converted dollar fills the bracket at today's rate and removes itself permanently from the pool that will generate taxable RMDs later. Think of it as seasoning added at exactly the right moment. Too much and you push into a higher bracket. Too little and you waste space that vanishes on January 1st. Your willingness to run these numbers each year is what separates a good plan from a great one. The fourth step is to revisit this entire calculation every November before the tax year closes. Because your income, your bracket, and your conversion opportunity shift annually based on market returns and changes in your spending. Before this year ends, you owe it to yourself to sit down with a CPA or fee-only financial planner who can verify your numbers and catch anything you may have missed. This is not a one-time decision. It is an annual recipe that you adjust each year based on what the ingredients are doing. Gerald eventually closed the laptop that Thursday morning, but not before writing 3 numbers on the back of his spreadsheet: his Social Security benefit at 62, the room in his 12% bracket, and the Roth conversion amount that would fill it. He did not make the decision that day, but for the first time the question had stopped feeling like a gamble and started feeling like a calculation with a real answer. The silence in the kitchen felt different after that, less like uncertainty and more like the calm that comes from finally seeing the full recipe laid out in front of you. What had paralyzed him was not the complexity of the numbers, it was the fact that nobody had ever shown him all the ingredients in one place. Every retirement plan is a recipe, and the difference between one that nourishes you for 30 years and one that leaves you short is not the quality of ingredients, but the order and timing with which you combine them. Claiming Social Security at 62 is not a sign of impatience. For many people, it is the first ingredient added at exactly the right temperature to keep everything else in balance. The best financial decisions in retirement are almost never the ones that look impressive on paper, but the ones that fit the life you are actually living. If you've started thinking about when to claim, Drop a comment with your age and the one question that still feels unresolved, because the answers that help you often help hundreds of others reading the same thread. If this changed the way you see the decision, a like helps more people find it than you might expect. Next time you open that benefits estimator, bring a pencil and your tax bracket with you.